From the roundtable at Uncle's Studios in beautiful Southern California, welcome to another edition of WorkComp Matters, the central location for all you employers, you employees, and of course, we haven't forgotten about you independent contractors. My name is Steve Appel, and I'll be with you for the next hour with some talk, some news, and hopefully some answers about WorkComp Matters. Thanks for being part of the show, and if you can break away from your WorkComp Matters, please feel free to give us a call and clue us in with your questions, comments, and or concerns. The phone number worldwide, 818-357-4120. You can be old school and send a fax to 818-475-1437. You can send me an email to wcexaminer@aol.com. With me in studio, the Chief of Staff, Dr. Mike Zyma, the best-dressed man in Southern California, Mr. Ted Durden, my protege, Attorney Robert Ozeron. Scott Walton of Uncle's Studio is engineering the show. Back in Munich, Germany is Attorney John Scalia. And back at WorkComp Central, making sure the whole damn thing goes right, is Jake Paris. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of WorkComp Matters. Well, I'll tell you, as I've said before on the show, President Donald Trump, the gift that keeps giving, he gave us Brett Kavanaugh as a nominee for the Supreme Court. We, of course, went through 4 days of hearing. It's the Democrats complaining that although they had over 1 million documents, they had been shorted 30 or 40,000. It's basically blasé. It's basically no big deal. And then what happens? Christine Ford comes out and says that 36 years ago, Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh attempted to rape her. Now, I have some thoughts that I want to talk about this. Now, firstly, if the story is exactly as Miss Ford says or remembers, which I doubt because we've talked on this show about people's memories, and two people can see the same thing and the very next day have a different recollection. Here we're talking about something 36 years ago. If what Ms. Ford describes is actually what happened, then in my mind, there's no way the Senate should confirm Judge Kavanaugh. However, I don't believe that is the case, so then we have lots of questions. I know that Kavanaugh has vehemently denied that what she's accusing him of happened. I don't think he's denied or addressed knowing her. I heard he might have, although I haven't heard him deny that he was at the party. And these are questions that absolutely have to be addressed. Now, before throwing it out to the crowd, because I think I know what Mike is going to say, I know what Robert's been saying because he's been posting some of the stuff on his Facebook. I want to talk about what I think and what I'm going to say. I remember being in high school, going to high school parties, making out with girls, attempting to say yes, 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 when girls would say no, no, no. Now, I absolutely unequivocally never forced a woman to, well, at that time it would be, of course, have sex. At 16, 17, I probably didn't even know what making love is. I never forced myself on a woman. But as a regular teenager, 15, 16, 17 years old, making out with a woman, I would absolutely try and unbutton her blouse, but I would never try and rip it off. I certainly was never too drunk to do that. And at that time, I would be kissing on a woman and she would be kissing me, and I would go to unbutton her blouse really, really slowly and softly, and everything was cool. Your breathing would get a little heavier.
Let's keep it PG here, Bob.
Yeah, I'm turning me on here, Steve. You're turning me on here. Watch out. Be careful now. Table's about to rise.
And then, of course, my hand would naturally start to slip under articles of her clothing. And that would, of course, be the point when we would hear, no, don't do that. So, of course, I would remove my hand. I would continue to kiss, and then my hand would slowly but surely go underneath the clothing again, and I would hear no. And of course, I would say, come on, don't you want to? See, Robert knows what I'm talking about.
Well, it's a movie, but I guess we've all lived it, right?
The Steve Appel movie.
Awkward teenage years.
The awkward teenage years. My point being, guys growing up with hormones, and I am absolutely right in the middle of this category, we're going to try and get away with whatever we can. But I was always raised by my parents that when a woman says no, that means you stop. Now, Mom and Dad never said, well, you stop, but then don't try again. So, of course, I would stop, I would back off, and then I would move in once again as long as she was willing. I never, ever ripped a woman's clothes off. I never, ever, when she said, no, stop, I never tried to put my hand over her mouth. I never, ever tried to prevent a woman from leaving the room, okay? So nowadays, especially in the Me Too movement, and I taught my daughter before the Me Too movement, and we tell women now, and we tell men now, no means no. No matter where you are, no matter how far you've gone, no means no. You know, back in the 70s when I was a teenager, no means no unless you've passed a certain point. And once you've passed a certain point, a woman at that time was not allowed to say no, or at least that was in my mind. But that's definitely not what we teach women today.
It's not the law also.
And it's not the law also, because no means no.
Right.
So I'm going to put it out there. I don't believe that her recollection is correct, but if her recollection was correct, there's no way that I would confirm him as a Supreme Court justice. So I'm going to throw it out to the table first. Firstly, Robert, if her recollection is absolutely correct, do you think he should be confirmed as Supreme Court justice?
Well, of course not. But that's assuming that all of the vague allegations made against him 36 years ago are 100% accurate. And in fact, most reasonable people, I think, believe that they're 0% accurate.
Well, I don't think her recollections, as stated, are not vague at all. She's very specific.
No,
she was in a bedroom with two guys. One of them was Cavanagh. The other was Kavanagh's buddy,
who's denied this allegation.
Yep, her and Cavanagh were on the bed. She doesn't say for how long, but then she says he was trying to take her clothes off, and because that he was so drunk, he was unable to do it. Then the third guy jumped on the bed for whatever reason we don't know yet. They all fell on the floor, and then she ran out. And by the way, before he jumped on the bed, Cavanagh was covering her mouth to prevent her from saying anything.
Well,
so
you know what? Then she should testify in front of the Senate if she's so specific with her recollection.
I think the FBI thing is a delay tactic.
It's all circus.
No. I'm going to tell you why I disagree with that. Number one, I'm with Steve. The allegations aren't vague, Robert. She's very specific. And that's what caused me concern, in the sense that her allegations or her recollection is so specific, it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for doubt in that sense. Not to mention the fact you have some other people
I doubt
that have corroborated what she said. She did speak to a psychologist about it when it happened. Why she didn't call the police to report it, that's another question. The FBI thing, I think, is a smooth move on her part because of the fact if she grew up like I did or has any knowledge about what happened to Anita Hill after she came out of Clarence Thomas.
Correct.
Okay, so she's, in my opinion, she's playing it smart because what she's saying is before I go up in front of you guys and testify, why don't you vet all of this out? That way, if the FBI comes back and doesn't find it credible, then hey, then fine, he can be confirmed. There's no need for me to testify.
I think she may be being used by certain Dems, though.
Well, that may or not, because let me get to that in a minute. But here's the thing. Okay, she does not want to get in front of this panel and get excoriated. She just doesn't want to, and I can't blame her.
Excoriated. She's going to have to answer reasonable questions.
No,
like,
okay,
why did
but
it
Robert,
take you
come on, let's
3.5
not be naive. You and I have both seen a lot of these confirmations. The Democrats have been
I saw Clarence Thomas's, and I saw him deny Anita Hill's allegations.
But again, do you think that they handled him with kid gloves? No, that they didn't.
They were ruthless with Thomas.
They were ruthless with him, and they were also ruthless with Anita Hill. And do you think that they're going to treat this woman any differently? Of course they're not, because of the fact that I'm telling you, in my opinion, I think there's several things that's going on. Number one, when the Republicans threw it out there that she should come and testify, they didn't think that she would. They didn't think that she would because remember, she told Dianne Feinstein, I don't want to have my name released. Then she changed her mind. Now, there is some question as to the lie detector test that she took because they've asked, who paid for that? Why did you take a lie detector test? These things aren't cheap. Did you just come out of pocket on your own to do that? Now, that goes back to what Mike was saying.
It's interesting. I didn't know.
No.
Yeah, so as far as, who sponsored the lie detector test. Now, I don't think it's a delay tactic. I think she's doing that to protect herself. I think both of them need to be questioned about what did or did not happen. It needs to be given its due.
I want Robert to respond, but just let me qualify this, Ted. Back to Anita Hill in 91. Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill were alone. There were no witnesses, and it was all verbal communication, no physical touching. In this particular case, what we're talking about, we've got attempted rape with witnesses. Go ahead.
Oh, no, wait.
Wait, it's Robert's turn.
I know, but I want to speak to one thing that
Yeah.
he said before, and then he can comment on that too. He indicated that the guy that was there, he said what Ford is saying isn't true. Now, my question to that is, if you are so steadfast behind Kavanaugh, why are you refusing to testify? Because he's doing the same thing. He has come outright and said, I'm not going to testify. And it took me back to what happened with Michael Jackson and this PI that was hired that was putting listening devices improperly on people's phones. He vehemently denied it until he was put on the oath. Then he admitted to it. You can say anything that you want to off the record, but once you take that oath, things change.
Well, the alleged wit, has also some baggage because my understanding is he has written that back in those days, Georgetown Prep or whatever high school it was back in the East, back in those days, he would drink regularly, somewhat regularly to excess and blackout.
Right, and that's another thing. Now, if Kavanaugh was drunk, and I'm not trying to excuse what he did or did not do, but come on. I can't tell you how many of my friends, like you were just saying, had drank so much, and the next day they wake up, they have no recollection of what happened the previous evening. They don't know. Man, how did my underwear up on top of my head? They have no idea.
There's women.
Fortunately, Robert doesn't drink. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, I don't
generally
drink much.
Generally, you don't drink much.
Yeah, I'm not a Puritan.
Not
by
like
any
me,
means.
but go ahead.
Well, I wouldn't compete in that one. But firstly, this woman is I believe, a professor in Palo Alto.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
She is a PhD and or a doctorate.
Very highly educated.
In basically statistical psychology. She teaches numbers. Go ahead.
So she lives in an area and works in an area that's known for extreme leftism. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Yes.
What's the relevance?
She's a registered Democrat.
Academia in Palo Alto.
Okay,
Yes.
and what does that have to do with her credibility?
Well, this is a Trump appointee. This is all political. You don't think it has to do with her credibility, that she is the exact opposite of the current administration?
No.
I think she wears one of those pink hats as well. I think that the images come out, right? She's one of those people.
Yeah, but sexual assault is sexual assault. That doesn't have anything to do with political
I don't see the
affiliation.
relevance.
You don't,
No,
you,
come
you
on,
don't see the
Robert.
relevance in motivations of the person
No.
making it. You don't think
No.
the person... I see the relevance in her motivations. I see it, okay? I see that she is politically motivated. This is is there a medical record? You say that she saw a psychologist. Did she disclose her medical record from 30 years ago?
The psychologist came out and said that she spoke with her about it.
But that was years later.
She said
It was decades later.
36 years ago.
Actually, it was more like 28 years ago.
We know she said couples therapy with her husband going back to at least 2012. And apparently then is when she first recounted the incident but didn't give the name.
Right.
My understanding is, at least publicly, she has never said the name until just recently, the past 30 days.
So she didn't feel it was necessary when he became a federal judge.
Maybe
Okay,
maybe she didn't remember the name at the time.
Well, I don't know I don't think it's so much that. And look, I
This
look
stinks
at
to high heaven. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
It
no,
stinks to
Robert.
high
I'm going to
heaven.
disagree with you on this reason. Look, it was the same thing with Anita Hill. Anita Hill didn't come out with the allegation until she thought there was a possibility that this guy, who I'm going to characterize as a sexual predator, was going to be on the highest court of the land. Because if he wasn't going to be, he does no harm to anybody. He doesn't. And it's the same situation here. So you can look at it in the same vein. You can cast aspersions on all you want to.
So the second highest court in the land, the federal appeals court's not good enough for these accusers?
No, because
apparently?
when you're on the Supreme Court, that lasts forever. That has far-reaching implications.
All judges have lifetime tenure.
No, but what I'm talking about, but the Supreme Court is further reaching than on the appellate court.
I understand the implications of being on a Supreme Court. It's the Mount Rushmore of judges.
Course.
But at the same time, if somebody is going to be a federal court appellate judge at that level, that means they've gone through the trial level.
She might not have known that he was appointed.
I was just going to say it does not get the media attention.
So she was watching C-SPAN and said that was the guy.
I want to hear her testify. I know she's not.
So do I.
And I'm disappointed with this FBI thing because I think that's a ruse.
I don't think so, but I want to hear her testify too.
Same thing. If she is so credible, if she will stand up and say, you know what, I know I don't have the evidence at the time, I haven't documented it appropriately perhaps, but at least I'll have my credibility behind me. She won't even do that. All I have is a Supreme Court nominee, and right before confirmation, we hear the gallery, someone yell rape. What was that? Do you want to come forward and speak? No, I want to yell from the shadows.
Robert, you need to tread very careful on that because there are a lot of women out there that are raped on a daily basis and don't have the confidence to step forward. Because wait a minute,
and I agree that
because
we need to be vigilant.
Because you and I both know if they take the stand, they get crucified. Their character gets called into question. The sexual history gets called into question. Okay, so there are all sorts of reasons why women that were actually assaulted don't want to take the stand.
You know
Wait
what?
a minute.
But
and
I see it differently in the same point.
Different.
But to get,
the only thing that you're doing, Robert, is you're just putting a political spin on it. That's all you're doing.
But there is a political spin.
But there is a political spin.
But it's there.
You can't
but what
help
I'm saying,
but see the circus.
but even with politics aside, you cannot minimize what may have happened to her. And that's all I'm saying is, you've already passed judgment. You've already made a decision without even hearing what the woman fully has to say before the panel. That's all I'm saying.
She refuses to speak.
I didn't know that she refused to speak.
Yes.
She refuses to
wants
speak.
An FBI
It was first.
Well, yeah.
Which would take months.
Yeah,
What's the delay time?
And that's what was qualified.
And
she
there's
said,
nothing to
I'll
investigate.
Take the stand. You don't know that.
You don't know.
Well, everyone who was there supposedly said it never happened on their own Twitter. So there's really just his word that it never happened and her word saying it did, but she won't come forward to officially say it.
Well, why won't the guy come?
Or you're speculating?
Well, no, I'm saying it happened. She has refused to testify without an FBI investigation ahead of time.
Oh, okay.
And the FBI has already said they're not going to open an investigation because there's nothing to investigate.
Kavanaugh's bud at the time, his last name is Judge, has said that he doesn't remember anything like that happen. Has anybody else come out at the party and said it did not happen?
Not as far as I know about the party, but there have been a lot of women who have come forward talking about the type of guy Brett Kavanaugh is.
I haven't heard that.
A lot.
36 years ago?
Yes, their whole life. I've known this man his whole life. You know, we were friends. Maybe we dated, something like that. He is not that type of guy, period.
Okay, so if you kill a guy once, that's okay?
No,
if it happened 36 years ago, does that make you any less guilty?
No, it doesn't.
Really
And I agree with you. One time is all it takes, okay? But listen, men who assault women don't do it just one time if that's in their character. Okay. Firstly, I believe sexual stuff like that is inherent and you can't cure it. But that's a separate issue.
Oh, okay.
Let me go back real quick to one topic.
Okay, go ahead.
Which is this. It is important for victims of sexual assault when they make their allegations to be believed. It is the boy who cried wolf. If you start making allegations that are going to pretty much open up every woman to be called a liar. Oh, yeah, you waited 36 years? This is just like Brett Kavanaugh or just like Anita. You understand? There needs to be a presumption of belief with these accusations. And when you start making accusations that have such little weight that could start to poke holes in the idea that we should believe an accuser right away, that is dangerous. That hurts all women. It doesn't just hurt this case, which it's not going to even do anything to this case. All it does is hurt the cause of women and then move on, and he's still going to be confirmed.
But here's the thing, Robert. Okay, because what I see you doing, you're applying a very broad stroke. Because let's alter things for a minute. What if Kavanaugh was not trying to be confirmed for the Supreme Court? What if he was an everyday Joe like you and me? I don't think your opinion would be the same. I don't.
It probably wouldn't, but he's up
Okay.
for Supreme Court nomination. That is so hard to look past. That the timing of this, timing is everything
I
in
see.
life.
So the fact that he can be appointed to the highest court in the land is more important than him answering for a potential sexual assault that he
just
did
makes it
36 years ago.
political.
Because let me tell you something. On that point, he better be glad his ass ain't in Pennsylvania, because that's exactly what happened to Cosby.
Well, how about Clarence Thomas when Anita Hill started accusing him? He stood up there and he denied it. He called it, what did he call it? He called it a high-tech lynching, something like
Yeah,
that.
that's
I
exactly
recall.
what he called it. But you know who backed him up, and you probably don't know her, but Steve does, Mike does, Judge Hirschner. Judge Hirschner came and backed her. Judge Hirschner said, you know what? Yes, Anita Hill told me about this, and she testified before the panel. She did that. They still didn't believe her. You know why? Because they wanted Clarence Thomas, who had Republican leanings, to be appointed. And that's what they did. And that's all well and good. But like I said, but at the same time, her credibility took a huge hit.
Okay, that reminds me of cases where the employer witness will have 5 or 6 employees in a row all testify to the same thing. I think we've all had a case like that. They're all lying, right? And they try to think that the amount of lies that they can pile together with people who are on one side of the aisle, or one employer, so to speak, that will somehow outweigh the credibility of the one person that we have, because we were alone when the incident happened, right? So we can't say that it did or didn't happen. We have our credibility to rely on, and hopefully you believe us. But if you start piling in people to say he's a liar, he's a liar, he's a liar, they try to do. That's the same thing in politics. Just because you have 2 accusers, or somebody says, "Oh yeah, they did tell me," you know what? When there's a political spin on it, I'm going to take both with a grain of sand. I'm going to be very suspicious of both the denial and the allegation.
Well, I just think that this FBI thing was a curveball that she got used on. Frankly, the Dems that have taken the position that the only reason Kavanaugh has been appointed is to overturn Roe v. Wade, those type of lunatic people, and I could name names, but I won't, okay, they would use this tactic. I'm just saying she's being used like, Fonda in North Vietnam.
And again, that may or may not be true, but Robert, you're being a little hypocritical, because of the fact you're talking about people being piled in that want to support somebody that you don't believe is credible, but you're doing the same thing with the guy that was there that is supporting Kavanaugh. And I don't hear you talking crap about him, because even though he has said what he said off the record, he refuses to testify. What do you think about that?
Well, I do have a thought about that.
Okay.
Why should I have to answer questions that I'm a rapist, even though I'm not? When someone accuses me, if they're not going to step up and accuse me first, their credibility should be on the line first. It's like saying, "Excuse me, Mike, you're not a murderer, are you? No, you're not a rapist? No?" You know what? The judge would have my head if I asked questions like that in court. Why?
yeah.
Because I'm raising the presumption. It doesn't matter what the answer is, right? You weren't there when that rape happened on your block, right? You were in your home by yourself. Did anybody see you? So it could have, I know I'm not going to answer that last question. I'm just going to raise that presumption and just, tarnish your image, even though it has nothing to do with you. See, this is why it's so important to have credibility behind the accusations. Women should be empowered to report rapes and assaults right away, right? We shouldn't have a stigma about it. We should be supportive. We should have a culture where we believe them, so we want them to come forward. And when stuff happens like this, 36 years later, and I know the majority of assaults are not reported. We still need to work on that as a society. But still, if that's the case, listen, Dianne Feinstein, I think, came out recently and said now that she can't confirm 100% of the story of this lady or something like that. Perhaps Dianne Feinstein's got a dose of reality that she says, maybe I'm hurting the women's cause, not helping it with this.
I don't think she cares about the women's cause. I think Dianne Feinstein cares about the Dems' cause. Let me tell you what the Democrats' cause is. Barack Obama appointed and selected Judge Merrick Garland at the time that he was a lame duck president. The Republicans did everything they can to stall out the confirmation hearings.
And they succeeded.
And they succeeded.
And they stole his choice.
This is arguably a knee-jerk reaction. The Democrats are doing everything possible to delay confirmation. I think Mike, when does the first U.S. Supreme Court session start? Is it October 1?
I'm not certain.
Okay, it's next month. They're doing everything they can to stall confirmation. This is all Dianne Feinstein's workings, because she had the information in her hand
in July.
And when she interviewed Judge Cavanagh, and then the 4 days of hearings, nothing was ever mentioned You get millions, over a million documents. They absolutely mean nothing. Note, by the way, that during the 4 days, they never asked him how much alcohol he drank. They never asked him whether or not he ever smoked pot. We've heard that before. They never asked him if he ever assaulted anybody. And then I think it was it on the 4th day or was it after the 4th? It was
over the weekend.
Did they, when I think it was Feinstein who asked him publicly, have you ever assaulted any women, right?
I don't recall that.
Okay, well, and he said, of course not. And then, that might have been on the first day, and he said, of course not. And then, of course, then this comes out after day 4. As far as credibility, we have and by the way, we can explore this after the first break and go back to it. Judge Kavanaugh and Robert, you would know all of his decisions have been reviewed by judicial review boards. He gets A-plus ratings.
Yeah, he's the A-plus rated judge.
A-plus rated across the board.
By the ABA, which is a left-leaning organization. That's unbelievable.
He's a family man, never been accused of anything illegal. Now, again, we have, and I'm waiting to reserve judgment to hear her testify, but we have now the accuser, Christine Ford, who admittedly has been in couples therapy for at least 6 years, probably been in therapy before then. She claims that this incident 36 years ago has screwed up all of her relationships, including her marriage. She probably has long-lasting mental diseases from this, however slight. Issues, thank you. Personally, I absolutely, you want to talk about credibility? I believe that she was assaulted at that party. Whether or not it was this judge, I don't know. Women tend to remember assaults and sexual situations differently than men.
It's traumatic.
She is, yes, it's more traumatic. And I mean, how often do men get attempted raped versus women? Like you said, Robert, you said it happens daily. Women remember this differently. But I think she was assaulted, but with who or who did it, that remains to be seen. And we're going to have more talk with the guys about the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation. But right now, it's time to hear from someone else. Attorney John Scalia is a valuable contributor to the show, and he will also be talking this week about sexism and the work case, and I believe he touches on Kavanaugh as well. Without further ado, Attorney John Scalia.
Hi, this is John with the Work Comp International Report from Munich. This week I'm going to talk about sexism in the workplace. No, I'm not going to talk about Brett Kavanaugh, nor am I going to talk about Leslie Moonves, who has to resign from CBS as a result of allegations of sexual impropriety, even though both those subjects are tempting. I'm going to talk about sexism in tennis, specifically women's tennis. As we all know, it's been famously raised by Serena Williams, who, as a result of her hysterical outburst at the U.S. Open, has said that there is sexism in women's tennis. Is there? Well, to begin with, let me answer the first question you may have, which is, why should I talk about sexism in women's tennis? After all, I'm a white male. Thanks for noticing. And so I am. I have been a tennis fan since I've played tennis since I was 12, and I'm still a 4-point plus player. However, I am a white male. But let me point a couple things out. First, I was raised by a single parent who was a woman. I was raised by my mother, who's the most important individual figure in my entire life. My doctor was a woman from the time I was born until I was 26. I've been on the social progressive side of issues and liberal activism since I was 18. The first time I walked a picket line, it was to protest the refusal to hire African Americans at Jack London Square in Oakland. Yeah, I know that was a long time ago. And believe it or not, they were not hiring African Americans. I protested the lack of gun control when Robert Kennedy was shot and raised money to send a telegram to the California senator. I raised more money than I needed for the telegram for my classmates at Santa Clara University. So I sent the rest of the money to the Southern National Leadership Conference, otherwise known as SNCC, which was a left-wing organization of young politically active African Americans, greatly hated by J. Edgar Hoover. And finally, if you ever visit Las Vegas and you see women dealing cards or on the other side of the table, you can thank yours truly for that. That's right. I wrote the federal government decision outlawing job discrimination against women in Las Vegas. It was being done to curry favor with the Mormon fathers of the town. And I wrote the decision that said the casinos had to put women on the other side of the table, and now they're there. Okay, so now we come to Serena Williams and her outburst at the U.S. Open. What happened? Well, she was penalized for a coaching violation. You are not allowed to accept coaching when you are playing tennis. Yeah, I think it's an outdated rule, but it is a rule and everyone knows it. Now, her coach was on TV filmed giving her instructions, giving her signals. Whether she saw them or not doesn't matter. That's a violation. And that is exactly what Julio Ramos, the line judge, penalized her for. And she went ballistic. The funny thing is, even after the match, her coach admitted that that's what he was doing. So it's clear that the violation was there. And what was Serena's defense to all this, despite her hysterical outburst in which she was personally insulting to Ramos, called him a thief, insulted his integrity? Her response was, well, it's just sexism because the men are allowed to get away with it. Well, guess what? BBC did a statistical analysis of the penalties assessed to men and women, and they calibrated it for the sets. The difference between the number of penalties assessed to men and women, 0.003%. Yeah, there's no sexism in the penalties. Is there sexism in women's tennis? Maybe. The women get paid the same amount of money as the men at the majors, and they play 3 sets. The men play 5. Does that sound like sexism? Oh, and here's one I'll bet you didn't know. The women play with a different ball. That's right. It's a different ball. It's lighter, and they're marked to make sure the balls don't get mixed up, because God forbid we wouldn't want them straining their poor, delicate physiques. Obviously, that does not apply to Serena, hitting the same ball as the men. So, Serena was, by the way, homeschooled. And I should point out that when Maria Sharapova was banned for a year for using a substance that had been recently classified as a PED, the Russians were so upset they hacked into the World Women's Tennis Association computer to find out whether or not there had been temporary use exemptions given. And guess who got them for one tournament? Both Williams sisters. Yeah, I guess if you're a world-class athlete, you need that performance-enhancing drug when you're sick. And we all know the trouble that Serena had with her pregnancy. Love to see those medical records. She always says, well, I've always drug tested, I'm always clean. Reminds me of Lance Armstrong. And finally, she had severe complications with her pregnancy. Again, I would love to see the medical records on that one. Okay, that's the View from Munich this week.
And John, as always, thank you very much. All of the guys at the round table are chomping at the bit. We got a musical break coming up from La Familia, Glenn Laughlin, and we'll be back with more talk on Kavanaugh.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? Now that you know who you are, what do you want to be? And have you traveled very far? Far as the eye can see. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? How often have you been there? Often enough to know. What did you see when you were there? Nothing that doesn't show. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. Naturally happy to be that way. Now that you found another key, what are you going to play? Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in every brown bag inside too. What a thing to do. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people?
Lawyers for Brett Kavanaugh, accuser Christine Blasey Ford called for an FBI investigation as a precondition for Ms. Ford to testify at the confirmation hearing. Republicans so far appear to be set to take a vote next week after offering Ms. Ford the opportunity to testify and allowing Kavanaugh the opportunity to rebut what has been presented so far. My understanding is that Kavanaugh is going to testify no matter what, and then Ford may or may not. Robert, everybody has a lot to say.
Yeah.
Robert, go first.
Well, I just wanted to touch really quickly when you said that Obama had that nomination of Garland, and he, while being a lame duck, and that the Republicans did whatever they could to derail until the election.
Well, it was stolen, was it not?
Well, okay, so I want to respond to that.
Yeah.
It's not unusual for the first couple nominations to get bounced, regardless if it's a lame duck presidency or when.
They never hold hearings. He didn't have the opportunity
Correct.
to get bounced.
Well, exactly. But that's what I'm saying. It's not unusual for the first couple names that are floated or requested to get rejected. Now, with Obama's a lame duck president.
This was just tabled, not rejected.
Same difference because of the upcoming election.
Because Mitch McConnell made it very clear. He said that because of the fact that Obama was on his way out, he thought that the Supreme Court nomination should be reserved for the incoming president. That's what he said.
Actually, that's the opinion I was going to give, which I think is it's not unreasonable if we're going to have a general election to let the country decide who they want on that.
Now
on
the
that
Dems
seat.
are saying the same thing about Kavanaugh.
Well, what are they going to wait?
Wait till next election.
Well, they've
November.
already
Wait till
started.
November.
They've started
That's
and
what they
closed.
want.
Right.
But Trump is going to be up for a re-election in 2020.
I'm not talking about Trump. I'm talking about the next election, general election, November, when they hope that the Dems hope to take back the Senate and Congress.
Exactly.
That's what this is all about.
But that will have no effect upon Trump's ability to nominate
No, but
Supreme Court justice.
it has an effect on whether or not the
He'll be
justice
confirmed.
gets confirmed.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have a vacant seat because we have a political lock.
Well,
Right.
that's what happened with Obama going on, Robert.
That's
It's
correct.
the same thing.
No, it's not because
Yes,
we're
it
having a
is.
general election on the total presidency here.
No.
And if that's the case,
You
that's
mean Congress? You don't mean
No,
presidency.
I'm talking about presidency.
Typical midterm
but what I'm
election.
saying, but
Typical midterm
what
election.
I'm saying though is political stonewalling is political stonewalling, and that's exactly what they did when Obama was on his way out. It just was. I mean, Mitch McConnell was honest enough to come straight out and say, "We're not going to do it."
And I understand that. And some political
that had happened
gamesmanship.
like once in 50 or 60 years
Right, yeah.
before, I think.
Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. So it's not unheard of. It wasn't the first time. Some political gamesmanship and installing out a nomination is standard in the politics. What happens is when we have a general election for the presidency and there's an open seat, as there was, it's not unreasonable to say, let's wait until the general election, Trump versus Hillary,
But it's
and
never
see.
happened. But once before.
They stole that nomination.
They
you
did.
can't
Come
deny
on.
that.
The American
I think
people
what they
picked.
did was unreasonable.
I do too.
I
do too.
would slightly disagree. I would be upset if I was the Democrats in the sense that the defense is denying the QME appointment and they're always delaying the trial. They want to do a cross-ex. We always have that. Okay, that is it's within the rules. Okay,
Yeah, but Robert, it's like what they characterize as the nuclear decision that they made in the Senate last year. When they destroyed the filibuster, it's the same thing. It's always the same thing on both sides, Rob, and I'll give you that. Because when the Dems do it, the Republicans complain. Republicans do it, the Democrats complain. But again, they're both engaging in tactics that I don't think are correct. Neither one should be doing it. And going to what Steve said, what Dianne Feinstein did was very shrewd. It was.
I was going to say it was awful.
That's all it was. It was political maneuvering. That's all it was.
Just because it's in the rules doesn't make it reasonable. And Mike and I have spoken on this before about green eggs and ham. Right? You're allowed to do it. It doesn't make it reasonable.
Right, and that's what gave me the creeps about Cruz was reading green eggs and ham.
Because let me tell you what Dianne Feinstein did by waiting to bring this to the fore the way that she did. What she did is, for her, the way the Democrats are looking at it, it's a win-win. Because what they're going to say is, okay, we're going to bring these allegations out. And if you confirm Kavanaugh, well, then all that's going to happen is during the midterm elections, you're going to get all these women, they're going to swoop in and get a lot of you Republicans out. And if you don't, if you delay and stall, then, hey, then we are already anticipating that we're going to take over the legislature, possibly the House, possibly the Senate, and then we won't confirm him anyway. It was like I said, right or wrong, it was shrewd.
Well, I see the tactic that you believe they're engaging in. However, I don't think it's going to work out that way, and I think it will in fact work against the Democrats because Dianne Feinstein, in my opinion, and hopefully to the opinion of most reasonable Americans, looks awful in the sense that what I'm going to do? I'm going to know about this woman's rape allegation if it is true, which I'm very suspicious about. But if it is true, I'm going to pull it out like it's the last card up my sleeve, the old rape card. How dare?
She's doing.
That's what she's doing, exactly.
I would be so upset that how dare you use this woman's rape as your last-minute get-out-of-jail-free card type of deal. If you knew about it into July, and first of all, you're wasting the time of the Senate, you're wasting the time of the American people, that you should have told the FBI about this during the background check.
It's within the rules, so it's reasonable, right?
I'm not saying it's not within the rules. I'm saying it's disgusting. Disgusting behavior to use somebody else's rape as a trump card up your sleeve at the last moment.
Okay, you mean kind of like the way that Trump was using immigrants that killed illegal immigrants that killed people as justifying
I understand.
his plan. Well,
that's generalization. That's a different.
No, it isn't because look, deplorable tactics. I don't give a damn who's doing it. It doesn't matter. Okay, if it's bad, it's bad.
But this is a deplorable tactic. Okay, we can agree that using someone's rape at the 11th hour as the final trump card, so to speak, is a bad faith play.
It can leave a bad taste in your mouth. Yeah.
Now let me ask you this:
why wasn't brought on in July? I don't know.
Perhaps considering the behavior of the Democrats in the hearing so far, and then finally capping it off with the cherry on top of the 11th hour rape allegation, let me ask, or assault allegation. Sorry for saying rape. I know there's differences. Don't you think that perhaps the American people sees this and think, you know what, there was such little credibility on the left and now they've just evaporated it all, and in fact the election's going to go against them because how dare they use this woman's rape as some sort
of...
All I'm saying is it could work the same way that Ted is saying, or it could work the exact opposite. We don't know.
I tell you what my takeaway is. My takeaway is that these proceedings have become so politicized, it's undermined, in my opinion, the pristine of the Supreme Court. It just does. It's tainted. Going back to what happened, even to what the Democrats did to Clarence Thomas. Okay, it's become political fodder. That's what it's turned into a circus. Is what has happened.
Ted,
which is why the allegation has such low weight.
Well, no. I think this allegation has a hell of a lot more weight than back in '91 with Anita Hill, and let me tell you why. Firstly, as I said earlier, there was no physical contact. What Anita Hill was talking about in '91, people had never heard of. There was no social media. There was no
sexual
Twitter.
Harassment, right.
All of the verbal sexual harassment. I mean, they were talking, quote, sex with animals. And people back then, and I remember this, were saying her accusations are so ridiculous, I can't possibly believe that. If that testimony would have come out today with social media, it would be totally different. I think that these accusations are given a lot of credibility and I'm not saying I believe them. I believe that she was assaulted. I don't know if it was him, but here's why. You got the Senate Judiciary Committee to hold another day of hearings just on this accusation alone. Because if you didn't hold an extra day of hearings, the American public would think that you swept it under the rug. But I absolutely agree with Ted. Not only the proceedings, but the stature of a Supreme Court judge has just been dropped down a couple of notches.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious as why we would have to engage in this entire process of trying to confirm Kavanaugh if Feinstein, firstly, knew of these allegations so early. why she would allow first. Wouldn't
Well,
she
it's
just
within
say
the rules. You said it yourself.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but if it was true, if Feinstein herself believed it was true, why wouldn't she have gotten it out early, right away? Oh, look, everybody, President Trump just nominated somebody who's an assaulter.
I don't think she cares if it's true or not.
Well, the one thing that
she's sticking it back to the Republicans
There's a lot
for screwing up the Merrick Garland appointment.
Well, not just that. You look at Jeff Flake. Jeff Flake is relishing in the fact.
Who is that?
Jeff
He's
Flake.
the Arizona guy, and he's a never Trumper. He hates Trump.
Yeah.
He's a Republican.
Yeah, and he's retiring, so he doesn't have anything to lose. And, because he's from Arizona, John McCain is his best friend and mentor. And the way that Donald Trump came out and talked about what I like my heroes not to be captured and stuff like that, that really grinded his gonads. So anyway, he has no love for Trump. And so he
grinding gonads and raising the round table. Please continue, Ted.
This guy's a real Trump hater.
So he sees this as an opportunity to stick it to Donald Trump as well. So anyway,
there should be a level of seriousness around the rape allegations, and it would seem that now. Whether it's true or not.
Well, the only one that's making light of it at the table is you.
No, I'm not making light of it. I'm saying I don't believe it. I'm saying the weight is very low to me, such that I think it may do harm to people who have legitimate claims. And I'm looking out for them. That's all I'm saying. Is I would be more protective of claims that I feel have merit.
But Robert, you've said at this round table many times on many different occasions that you don't see the level of sexual harassment and men harassing women as if constantly expressed.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not harassing women in my office, that's for sure.
And also, you don't see it.
Well, I don't see it because I'm not around it. I understand that, and I have some clients who do.
I've been around it. I've seen it. I've stopped it. Here's what I'm getting really challenged by what you're saying, Robert. When you're saying not any weight to it. All a woman has that's been sexually assaulted is her word.
Yes.
Okay, so that's all she can do.
And we should believe them.
Okay, but again, thank you. But my whole point being is,
well, if you should believe them, why don't you believe them?
So again, see, I think you're just caught up because it's a political atmosphere. Like I said, if it was removed from the political atmosphere, you allowed yourself, you wouldn't have this opinion. So strip that away.
Perhaps, yes.
So all I'm saying is, if the woman is making the allegation, give her the benefit of the doubt until there's evidence that comes to the fore to dictate or demonstrate otherwise. That's all I'm saying.
I can't. I wish I could.
Yes, you can, but you choose not to. Yes, you can, but you choose not to.
Timing is everything in life, guys, right? Timing is everything.
Dianne Feinstein's
or you mean like rape?
Timing.
You mean like rape? Rape is about timing too?
Well, I'm talking about credibility. You guys, we all play poker sometimes, right?
Sure.
When somebody bets, how much they bet, how often they bet, and from where they bet is all information, correct?
Yes.
You can tell a lot about the credibility of their hand from their prior actions.
In
the
poker,
timing.
In poker, they call it a tell. Please continue.
Well, there's a tell. A tell could be either a physical action or it could be a pattern that you pick up.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I believe simply from the pattern that has been exhibited in this allegation, from the timing, from when it was made, the prior actions of the left, and all of these disturbances in the confirmation hearings, with the culmination, like it's a play of a rape allegation or an attempt. I see that pattern, and I think you're bluffing. I don't.
But it's
feel
Feinstein's pattern.
Yeah, not Ford's. It's not Ford's. It's not Ford's pattern.
The woman, the woman who cared so much that she waited until the 11th hour to pull it out like it's a game card.
But supposedly she's been getting therapy and mentioned it in therapy for over 6 years.
And even as far as Feinstein is concerned, when she got the information, she did immediately turn over to the FBI back in July. The FBI knew about it in July. She turned it over to them. So they knew.
Right?
Yeah, she did.
Uh-huh.
And the FBI investigated?
No, they didn't investigate it because
its statute of limitations is blown. There's no crime.
Right.
Well, no. The FBI would do more investigation than that for Senate confirmation, for Supreme Court confirmation.
But he wasn't nominated at that point, was he?
In July?
I believe.
I don't think so.
I believe he was.
And his name was being floated. I
Okay.
believe.
Yeah.
His name was being floated.
So, and listen, Feinstein wouldn't have had this name if Brett Kavanaugh hadn't been nominated, right? She didn't care about this guy before. He was on his federal appeals court. She never batted an eye. The moment he's a Trump pick for the open court spot, now all of a sudden I think I recall that he's a rapist. Really? We could have used this information. Maybe he was on the federal bench or the trial bench.
My understanding was that at a certain point, Ms. Ford said, okay, it's okay to use my name. I will testify. And then the Dems changed the rules.
So we want a federal investigation
Then
first.
they said, well, actually, Ms. Ford's counsel is now saying that they want an FBI investigation first, which, of course, would take it past November and past the election.
Well,
and if they had gained control at that point, then it'll all be moot out because they would vote him down.
And the FBI, of course, will say, what do you want us to do? It's your word versus everybody who says it never happened.
Well, my
so
understanding
investigation
is
over.
Trump has to authorize an FBI investigation at this point.
I
And
didn't
ain't
know
gonna-
that.
Yeah, that ain't going to happen.
They did the background check.
That's my
I
understanding.
don't think he has to authorize it.
That's what they were saying on the major news outlets
I
this
don't.
morning.
I don't think he does, but I know that the FBI does do the first background check immediately upon nomination. They talked about that and how Kavanaugh
It's
cleared
a
it.
background check of Kavanaugh.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this hopefully would have come out, and
But
also
36 years ago when he was in high school?
Well, if a guy is the type of guy to assault women, let me tell you, there'd probably be a string. Okay.
No, not necessarily, Robin. We talked about
Well, I
this
know.
off mic.
I know. He could be drunk or something.
Yeah,
He's a
and
20-year-old
that
kid.
happens because it happens on a regular basis. Somebody goes out, a man goes out, has too much to drink at a party, and a woman or a young girl gets sexually assaulted. That happens.
I find those hard to believe that the guy didn't have signs from other women that you can find to say, oh, actually, he couldn't take no for an answer. There's always signs. In this situation, it is isolated. As isolated an event that you could ever have, where women in his life who have known him since he was 13 years old and have grown up with him with raging hormones next to each other saying he's totally appropriate.
I agree that a guy that did this
Would do it.
If it is true, that wouldn't be the only time.
Just something with force?
But
Of course.
again, you guys are presupposing a lot because you
That's
you
true,
look at what happened in the Me Too movement. How many women did it take for somebody to come out? Look at what Bill Cosby. One came out, two came out, more came out. And again, let's keep it real. Do you really think, let's say for the sake of argument, if there are other women out there that Kavanaugh did this to, after seeing what this woman may be subjected to, do you really think that they would be inclined to come out of the closet and
in
say
fact,
something?
I was just thinking, since she's come out, no one else has come out to
Right.
accuse him. Right?
And also, boss, I know the fact that you said, well, she told her therapist. All I can say is a lot of people say things to their therapists that are not true.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. A lot. Probably the first person you lie to, okay, is your therapist. How you doing? Oh, I'm fine. I haven't done drugs
Okay.
in forever. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And in fact, they're high at the appointment, okay?
Well,
I've seen it all the time.
Well, it's just like they say about lie detector tests. If you're a sociopath or if you
Yeah.
have psychosis, you can, or if you are a terminal liar, then you can beat a lie detector test too. There's always going to be exceptions in these situations, Robert. Yeah, are people always truthful with their therapists all the time? No, but I would imagine any therapist that's worth their salt is going to be able to vet that person by asking questions, delving deeper to really get to the truth.
I would also think if anybody's paying for their own therapist, they're going to be truth. I mean, I realize what you're probably referring to or what you've experienced are those that have a litigated case going on where they're not paying for it.
Well, that perhaps people who are mandated to go to appointments like drug appointments, right?
I was married for 11 and a half years. I had 4 different therapists on and off throughout my entire marriage. I never lied to my therapist once. Now, of course, I thought my ex-wife's version of what she told the therapist was different than my version, but I never lied to make myself look better.
What do you guys think there's a chance that this woman also has perhaps underlying mental illness, something that makes her easily
I said
manipulable?
that a half hour ago. There's no question
Well-
about anybody that's been in therapy for 6 years has some type of mental illness, regardless of how minor it might be.
Well, I wouldn't characterize it as illness. She may have some issues per se. I would characterize it as
Well,
that.
you can call it a depressive disorder. You can call it
Right.
an anxiety disorder.
She's got a solid academic record. I mean, it's solid blue
her-
ribbon.
No, it is. Yeah, her reputation is stellar in that sense. And again, which begs the next question then. Why expose yourself to such ridicule?
Which
Why-
is
and-
exactly
and
what I
scrutiny.
said about Anita
and
Hill.
scrutiny.
What does Anita Hill
Yeah.
got to gain from
She's a
doing
leftist
this?
martyr, of course. Why wouldn't she? Her whole side hates Trump virulently. They hate him.
No,
Hills?
back then it was.
Okay.
Oh,
back
no,
then
not
it
Anita
was,
Hill. I'm talking about
it was
currently.
Bush, I think.
Oh, current.
Okay, so
I'm talking-
so let
I'm
me
talking
get
currently.
so let me get this straight. I'm a left wing nut, and I'm going to put myself out on the public stage to be excoriated, humiliated, crucified for the world to see because I want to drink poison and hope Trump dies. Yeah, that makes sense,
Well,
Robert.
put it this way: where she works, no doubt, She goes into work, and they say, "Oh, you're so brave. You're a hero. Way to
Robert's
stop
saying
Trump."
She's protected.
Okay, yeah, she's living in an echo chamber out there in Palo Alto. Do you understand? She's the culmination. She's in leftist academia in Palo Alto. You can't get any further left. If you were, you'd be in Hawaii.
Well, supposedly
okay?
that she had to leave her house though because of death threats. So.
Death threats.
Right, I heard
She's
the
probably
same
getting
thing,
invited
too.
to every Democratic fundraiser there is. They're going to bring her out next Stormy Daniels, okay? So all I'm saying is we want to protect women. I think even I wish that I could believe her. Put it that way. I want to. But I just see so many flags that I just can't. I think it's harmful to women's claims that should be believed immediately, that we need to prosecute and investigate thoroughly, right? And if this one is true, let's investigate. Stand up for the truth. If you're a true martyr, right? If you're not just the most popular person at a leftist party, if you're really up for the truth, if you care about the American society like you claim, right? We got to stop this nomination here. Got to stop the confirmation, that is. Then stand up and do it. I'll be supportive. And if it's true, he needs to not only, I hope he could be prosecuted for something like that. All right? But that's not the case here. All right, the case here, it's a 36-year-old allegation that Feinstein's using as a tactic, and it's the culmination of a lot of interruptions of what should be the highest-rated judge by the ABA in history.
So let me ask you a question along those veins. I'm going to go back to something you said earlier. So what you're telling me is, if this had come out in July before Kavanaugh was nominated, you'd believe her?
I'd have more credibility. I don't know what I would believe or not believe. Okay. All I'm saying is day 4 or 5 of Senate conference. You know what I mean? Why not right away? Why waste the time of the American people?
It's all theatrics.
Exactly.
But she didn't. She gave it to Feinstein before the hearing started.
Yes, in July. Now you can't blame Ford for that. She did what she thought.
I blame Feinstein for this
right,
all
absolutely.
the way.
Sure. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting to, Robert. You want to come after Ford to talk about her credibility. Ford didn't do this. Ford gave the information in July. Feinstein was the one that sat on it.
And wanted to remain anonymous.
Right. Feinstein was the one that sat on it. So I don't know why you're trying to go after her credibility when it wasn't her that started this whole circus. It was Feinstein.
It's so difficult for women because I hate the fact that I'd have to go after what might be assault victims' credibility. That is awful, right? You feel bad as a person if you're wrong, but I hope I'm not wrong, and I want to stand up for what's right. And if that's the case, frivolous accusations only harm society. They don't help it. So there's no one wants to call balls and strikes on this. We talked about that off the air. It's tough. No one wants to do it, and anytime you take a stand like I am, that's going to be saying, well, the facts here are not so great. I have to say that I'm not going to believe this one. Oh, you're promoting this rape culture and all that. I don't want to. I want to stand up for what's right, but I just think that this is a circus, and I'm not going to be caught up in it, and I'm not going to, believe these things about Judge Kavanaugh's character when he's had an impeccable record on the bench. He seems to be a dedicated jurist. I don't even know. What was he, 17 years old when this allegedly occurred?
17, right,
yeah.
17.
Oh,
She was 15.
She was, so, okay, so we're I don't know. I'm just saying there is so much to give you pause.
But again, I hear you, but you can't just look at this record. Hey, Ted Bundy was a great guy as long as you weren't blonde-haired and a cheerleader.
I get that. You know what? And I hope the truth comes out. That's why we have trials and investigations. It's the search for the truth. We all want the truth.
I hope the truth comes out, too.
I wish that she would present on Monday and give testimony like Anita
You know what?
did. Come on, gal.
If she presented,
do this.
and at least she presented in a way where someone will look at her and say, I believe her. That's all it takes for a lot of people like me. But when you're not even going to stand up and say it, if you're going to say it from the shadows, or you're going to use Feinstein to let you be tooled around like some sort of, why would you let your rape happen? Why would you give the exclusive on your rape to Feinstein to use at the 11th hour on the confirmation hearings? Isn't that disrespectful to yourself? Don't you?
Well, wait a minute, Robert. But again, she didn't give it to her for that purpose. She gave Dianne Feinstein the information. You can't blame Ford for what Feinstein did with it, Robert.
She could have posted it on Twitter. You know what? Kavanaugh just got nominated. I wanted to say I knew this guy growing up.
Again,
and he assaulted me.
but you have to remember, she initially wanted to remain anonymous. She passed the information on, and she did what she felt she needed to do, and then that was that. Dianne Feinstein was the one that turned into the circus. She held on to it, and then let it drop like a gaseous fume in the middle of the room.
But also, this whole confirmation's I got to say, it's been the circus that I haven't seen in a long, long time.
Oh my God, yeah.
All right. I don't know when cooler heads are going to prevail. We've all been waiting, but instead we're all spinning off like a top off the center of the earth, and they're throwing issues at us that divide even us around the round table. We're thinking,
the
oh,
nation's just getting more
Yeah,
polarized.
look at what happened with Borg.
Take a minute. We've got to wrap it up.
Bork
Go
was
ahead.
a good choice not to put on.
I
the
know, but
Supreme
still,
Court. Okay,
look at
I
what
actually
happened.
did a
to
whole
him.
thesis on Robert Bork. You know that?
Did you
Oh
really?
my gosh!
I'd love to read it. I mean,
Would
can
you? I think
have
I
a copy.
It's probably in my old files. It was a law school paper.
Right. Bring it in.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. Well, boss.
Well, that was fantastic. Great discussion, and I had a feeling we weren't going to get to any news except for this one news story, and it bears out. What can I tell you? Great show, guys. For my chief of staff and right-hand man keeping me in check and out of trouble at least 90% of the time, Dr. Mike Zyma. For the best-dressed man in workers' compensation, Southern California, Mr. Ted Durden. My protege, attorney Robert Ozeron. Scott Walton of Uncle Studio on the board, taking care of all the technical difficulties. Back in Munich, Germany, attorney John Scalia, and of course all the good people back at WorkComp Central that continue to support and approve of this project, including but not limited to Leaf File and Jake Paris. My name is Steve Appel. We'll see you again next week on another edition of WorkComp Matters.
There goes my Supreme Court nomination.